Don't know how to pull off a Moicano-style fade? Yo, stick around cause I'm about to drop some knowledge and show you my tricks to get you rocking that look.
Let's go.
In this type of gradient with a curve, it's important that when marking our base guide, regardless of the chosen length, we do it with the corner of the blade. This will generate a smooth curve without any straight angles. In this case, I marked my baseline at the midpoint because we're aiming for a more standard fade. After marking the base guide, I use my trimmer to remove the excess hair below without going up to the same height. Remember, if you don't have a trimmer or edger, you can still do it. The only thing you'll have to do is skip this step or use the clipper machine first and then shave with a shaver if you have one. Now, to finish with the light tone, we're going to shave, trying to maintain a distance between our baseline and the shaver of at least 1 finger's width. This will make it easier to erase the mark I made with the shaver, while I'm erasing the line with the same shaver, moving it from top to bottom. I wanted to ask you if you'd like me to make a tutorial on cutting without using a trimmer or razor. The idea would be to only use the clipper machine, which you can try to find one for household use. I think this type of content would be quite interesting and could be helpful for those who are just starting out. Once we're done with the light tone, we'll start with the gray tone. Starting with our clipper without a guard and with the lever open, we'll create our first guide. I'm going to make it about 1 finger's width because, as you can see, the client has fairly dark hair, and usually with this type of hair, if we compress the tones too much, the fade doesn't look as aesthetically pleasing. Immediately after creating the guide, we're going to proceed to erase it. For this, we'll use the 2-position technique. The first position is to set the lever halfway and only go up to the halfway point of the guide. In this step, it won't be completely erased, but will greatly weaken the line or mark. It's important not to go up as high as we did with the lever fully open. Otherwise, the fading process will become much more difficult. Then we move to the second and final position. For this one, we need to close the lever almost all the way and only pass it where the line is still visible because it's possible that in the previous step, with the lever halfway, it was completely erased. This will depend 100% on how much blending we did when marking the base guide with the clipper blade. That's why I recommend starting your fades with the clipper, as it's much easier. To wrap up the gray tone and kick off the black, I'm gonna switch to the #1 guard with the lever closed. Gotta keep a few things in mind here to avoid any future issues, you know? One is the width of the guide, and the other is where we position it. Like, the width of the guide depends on what kind of fade we're going for, whether it's lighter or more compressed. But it still needs to match up with the previous ones, you feel me? Let me break it down for you. If we made the first guide 1 finger wide, we can't go and make the second one, like 2 or 3 fingers wide. That would mess up the tones and look hella off. Remember, think of the fade as a visual effect, not just individual guides. Once we've marked the second guide, I'm gonna erase it right away. Gonna switch to the 0.5 guard with the lever halfway closed. That way I start fading the mark that needs to be erased and blend in the gray tone. Let me tell you the same thing I said when we erased the guideline for the steel line. It might completely fade the step with this lever position. But if it doesn't, like in my case, we gotta close the cutting lever even more. Almost shut it, and focus only on the line, starting where it's darker. To achieve the crest or Mohawk fade effect, it's crucial to use the corner of the blade on the curved area. That way we avoid creating sharp angles. With this step, we're done with the gray tone and can finally move on to the black tone or the connecting tone. For this, we're gonna use the #1. 5 guard with the lever open, or if you don't have it, you can switch to the #2 guard with the lever closed. It's important not to go too high with this level, cause then our bridge or transition would end up too high. Just so you know, generally this level doesn't go higher than the corner of the forehead. As you can see, throughout all the tones, I've been respecting the symmetry and sticking to my guide or baseline that I marked in the beginning. Once we've set up our third guide, we're gonna start fading it out. Gonna use the 1 guard with the lever open and work on the last visible step. Remember, since we set the level lower than what we used for the guide, we won't be able to raise the clipper as much. So if we went up 1 finger's length with the 1.5 guard, with this guard, we'll only go up half a finger. It's important to go against the grain in the curved area. We'll have to enter with the clipper at a diagonal angle in some areas and sideways in others. Gotta complement that with using the corner of the clipper comb. That'll help create the curved effect, because otherwise it would end up more like a Colombian number 7 cut with straighter angles. Now, to finish erasing the step, I'll close the lever halfway and work specifically where I see darker areas, or where the step is still visible. It's really important to train your eye to spot the mistakes and stop seeing the fade as just guidelines. You gotta start seeing it as lights and shadows. Now that we're almost done with the fade, or at least the machine part, I'm gonna outline the contours, starting with the nape area, which I'm gonna shape into a V or a point. Next, I'll define the curve of the hairline. Like I've said before, don't go too high at this point. It's better to mark it gradually and give it a more natural curve than to rush and remove too much hair. I emphasize this because it's a common mistake I see a lot, both with students and on social media. This recommendation or advice I'm giving also applies to marking the forehead or bangs, as many times in our eagerness to make the forehead as straight as possible, we don't realize it and end up removing too much. As a final step, I'm going to do some scissor over comb polishing. Personally, I think it's essential because it gives a distinctive and unique touch to the fades. During the polishing, you gotta be neat because otherwise, you could create a gap in the hair. My recommendation is to always start with the black tone, the connecting tone. It's the one that's higher up and serves as a guide for the other lower tones. At least that's how I like to work, because it's what feels comfortable to me. But as always, you gotta find what works for you and makes you more efficient. As you can see, I'm mainly focusing on polishing the hairline area. It was darker compared to the rest of the cut, and it wasn't fully blending in. That's why I say that polishing is more about using your eyes than specific scissor techniques. You gotta decide where to remove more hair, where to remove less, when to use the finer part of the comb, and when not to. But the only way to get good at it is by practicing and taking risks. To finish the polishing, I'll use just the scissors without the comb. That way I can cut those hairs that are very short and belong to the white tone or the start of the gray tone. If I notice that I can't trim those hairs with the texturizing scissors because they're too short, I'll switch to regular cutting scissors, which can cut them. But I gotta be more careful because it's easier to create a gap in the hair. That's why you'll see me using the scissors parallel to the hairline. Lastly, I'm gonna use a razor to shape the hairline against the grain. This will define it even more. Remember, it's crucial to lubricate the skin well before using the razor. You can use shaving gel, foam, conditioner, oil, or even just water, which in my opinion works best because it doesn't clog the razor. To finish off, I'll apply a molding wax and style the client's hair a bit. In this case, I'm using a matte style wax because I prefer the look it gives. And there you have it, the final result of the haircut. As you can see, the characteristic curved fade of the Mohawk turned out really cool. You won't spot any straight angles or boxy shapes at any point. The client chose not to mark the hairline, which I think would have looked great, but I still love the end result. And that's a wrap for the video. I hope you found it helpful and enjoyable. If you did, I'd appreciate it if you subscribe and let me know in the comments what video you'd like to see next. Have a great week, and catch you next time. Bye.